Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're talking about that magic moment when something on your screen becomes something you can actually hold in your hand. We are going to walk through the entire process, start to finish, of how you take a digital model and make it real using the manufacturing side of Fusion 360.
All right, let's just jump right in. We're starting at the end here with the finished product, these awesome CNC-routed wooden coasters. These things started out as just a file, just pixels on a screen. So the big question is, how do you get from that to this? What's the roadmap? Well, let's break it down.
So the magic that makes all of this happen, it's a process called CAM, and that stands for Computer-Aided Manufacturing. This is the secret sauce. It's the critical step that translates your beautiful design into a language that a machine can actually understand and follow.
Okay, so you've probably heard of CAD, right? Computer-aided design. If you've ever modeled anything in 3D in Fusion 360, that's what you were doing. But CAM is the next step. It's not about designing what the object looks like, it's about designing how the machine is going to make it. It's all about the instructions.
A really great way to get your head around this is to think about 3D printing. You know how a slicer program takes your 3D model and slices it into all those little layers for the printer? Well, CAM software is basically the slicer for a CNC machine. It does the exact same job, but instead of adding material, it's creating instructions for taking material away. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't my machine have its own software? And yeah, a lot of them do, but there are some huge reasons to learn how to do this inside Fusion 360. For one, it's free for hobbyists, which is awesome, but the real game changer is that your design and your cutting instructions are all in one place. So if you want to change the design, no big deal. You just tweak it and hit Regenerate Toolpath. You don't have to start all over. It is an incredibly powerful workflow. And the best part? Getting started is actually super simple. Your entire journey from designer to maker, it literally begins with a single click. Inside Fusion 360, you just go up to the top left, switch your workspace from design over to manufacture, and boom, a whole new world of tools just opens up. Okay, so we're in the manufacture workspace. First things first, before we can even think about telling the machine what to cut, we have to tell it two things: what it's cutting from and where it needs to start. And this whole process is called the setup. And this setup is really just two key steps. Step one, you define your stock. That's just a fancy word for the piece of raw material you're starting with, that block of wood or metal. And step two, you set your origin. This is your 0 point for everything. It's like telling the machine, hey, right here, this exact spot is where X, Y, and Z are all 0. Now listen up, because this is probably the single most important concept in this entire process. That little coordinate system you see on the screen, it has to perfectly match where you set the 0 point on your actual physical machine. If your digital origin is the top front left corner, you better make sure you've told the real machine that its origin is also the top front left corner. If you get this wrong, nothing else matters. Okay, so our setup is done. The software knows what we're cutting and where to start. Now for the fun part, creating the actual cutting instructions. These are called Toolpaths, and they're really the heart and soul of CAM. Now, when you look at the Toolpath menu, you're going to see a ton of options. It's a little intimidating, I get it. But here's the good news. For probably 90% of the projects you're going to do, you only need to know 4 basic 2D toolpaths. Let's walk through them. First up is the face toolpath. This one's super simple. You use it when your chunk of material is a little too thick. A face operation just sends the tool across the entire top surface to shave it down, making it perfectly flat and exactly the right height. All right, next up is the 2D pocket. This is your go-to for clearing out material from an enclosed area. Like the little dish in the middle of our coaster where you'd set your cup. A pocket toolpath it hogs out all the material inside a shape you define down to whatever depth you tell it. Then we have the 2D contour. You're going to use this one all the time. Unlike a pocket that clears out a whole area, a contour just follows a line. It's what you use to cut out the final shape of your part, to actually separate it from the big block of stock you started with. And number 4 is trace. Honestly, the easiest way to think about this one is engraving. A trace toolpath just follows a line or a sketch right on the surface. It's not for digging deep, it's for adding those fine details like text or that cool spiral pattern on our coaster. Okay, I gotta share this piece of advice because it's so important. When you open up the settings for any of these toolpaths, you're gonna see a wall of options. It's totally overwhelming at first, but here's the key.
Learn which settings you can just ignore for now. Focus on the 1 or 2 things you have to change, and don't worry about the rest until you actually need them. And speaking of critical settings, maybe the most important one of all is this little checkbox, multiple depths. Seriously, you should pretty much always have this turned on. All it does is tell the machine to take a bunch of small, shallow cuts instead of trying to be a hero and carve out everything in one giant deep pass. Trust me, this one little box will save you so many broken cutting tools and ruined projects.
So, with all these options and settings, you're probably thinking what I was thinking when I started. Wow, this feels risky. How do I know for sure that I haven't messed something up before I press the big green button and potentially break something expensive? And you know what? That's a really smart question. Well, the answer is one of the most powerful and, honestly, most essential features in all of Fusion 360, and that is simulation. Think of it as your digital safety net. Before you send anything to the machine, you can hit Simulate and watch a complete animation of the entire cutting process right on your computer. You get to see the tool moving around, you see the material getting carved away, and most importantly, you can spot any huge mistakes, like the tool crashing into your part, when it's just pixels and doesn't cost you a thing. Whatever you do, never skip this step. All right, so once you've run the simulation and everything looks perfect, you are at the finish line. The very last step is called post-processing. All this does is translate those pretty toolpaths you see on the screen into a boring text file called gcode. It's just a long list of coordinates the machine understands. You just pick your specific CNC machine from a list, hit the button, and it spits out the exact file you need. And that's it. That's the whole workflow from start to finish. You go from design to manufacture, you do your setup, create your toolpaths, you check it with a simulation, and then you post-process. You now have the complete roadmap to take an idea that's just in your head and turn it into a real, physical object that you can hold. So the only question left is, what are you going to make?